In February 2011, a significant shift took place in Libya, marking a turning point for not only Libya, but also other Arab countries like Tunisia, Egypt, and Yemen, which had already experienced political instability in the preceding months. These series of uprisings were commonly referred to as the Arab Spring by Western media, assuming it was a revolution against repressive regimes and dictatorships. However, perhaps a more appropriate term would be the Arab Autumn. The catalyst for these protests originated in Tunisia with the tragic suicide of a destitute street vendor. Driven to desperation by constant harassment from local police, he set himself on fire. In Cairo, the protests in Tahrir Square against the Mubarak government were led by the youth, who blamed corruption and unemployment for their grievances. The majority of the population had three fundamental demands: social justice, employment opportunities, and the chance to live a normal life. While Libya initially shared similar sentiments, the reasons behind the escalation into a civil war were distinct from other Arab countries. In 2011, Libya had a unique political situation compared to Tunisia and Egypt. Despite being ruled by an authoritarian and controversial leader, Muammar Gaddafi. Despite its relatively small population of 6 million people, Libya enjoyed a decent standard of living, even better than countries like Yemen or Lebanon. This was largely due to the country's oil and gas industry, which employed a skilled workforce and generated significant profits. Gaddafi maintained tight control over political and economic matters through a system of loyalty built over the years, relying on alliances, nepotism, and financial resources. Gaddafi had held on to power since 1969 when he seized control in a coup d'état, establishing the Arab Republic of Libya. Despite facing attacks from the United States in the 1980s, Gaddafi gradually normalized relations with the West, becoming known as a tough leader by the early 2000s. Some European leaders even tolerated him under an unwritten agreement. As long as he didn't cause trouble with migrants, they would leave him alone. Therefore, Libya did not experience significant unrest during that time, and any dissent was limited to extremist elements. However, the uprisings in Tunisia and Egypt convinced Qatar, one of the Arab Gulf countries, that it was possible to overthrow Gaddafi's regime from the outside. Qatar sought to gain influence in the region by presenting itself as a supporter of the fall of North African dictatorships. This move was driven by Qatar's desire to surpass its rival, Saudi Arabia, which traditionally backed radical and ultra-conservative Islamist forces like the Wahhabis and Salafis. Qatar, on the other hand, supported and financed more moderate Islamic fundamentalist groups like the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. This divergence in their approaches to Islamist forces had always been seen as a threat by Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, who considered the Muslim Brotherhood an existential challenge. On February 16 and 17, known as the Days of Wrath, unexpected events unfolded in Libya, catching many analysts off guard. Libya was considered one of the most stable countries in the region, and even Gaddafi himself was taken aback and responded with confusion. The spark ignited in the eastern region of Cyrenaica, specifically in the city of Benghazi. It quickly became evident that these events went beyond a simple revolt or local insurrection. They were far more complex. Coordinated actions and the widespread availability of weapons indicated a well-orchestrated plan behind the uprising. Notably, certain European governments, particularly France and Britain, swiftly offered support to the rebels. Former French President Nicolas Sarkozy, influenced by his advisor Bernard Levy, believed that the so-called Arab Spring presented an opportunity to overthrow Gaddafi. Additionally, Sarkozy saw potential economic benefits for France, particularly in the energy and military sectors, by gaining access to Libya's lucrative market. In the media, a narrative began to circulate regarding the Libyan crisis. It suggested that Gaddafi's regime brutally suppressed a peaceful and popular revolt, painting him as a ruthless dictator clinging to power. This narrative originated from Qatar, which systematically broadcasted images of violence, destruction, anger, and death, ultimately convincing European public opinion of Gaddafi's alleged massacre to maintain his authority and privileges. Qatari news outlets described how the Libyan Air Force indiscriminately bombed civilian areas in Cyrenaica, causing thousands of casualties. Furthermore, the media reported on mercenaries allegedly paid by Gaddafi, who were accused of committing atrocities such as rape and pillaging. However, these claims lacked substantial evidence. Ironically, most Libyans refrained from actively participating in the uprisings due to fear of reprisals from the regime. Their passiveness allowed Gaddafi's troops to regain control of most of the country within a few weeks, swiftly advancing towards Benghazi to crush the rebellion once and for all. Faced with almost certain defeat, the rebels in Cyrenaica appealed for military intervention from the Western powers. In March of the same year, NATO, although hesitant, and the United States, even more reluctant, became involved in a brief yet significant mission called Operation Odyssey Dawn. The Libyan Air Force was effectively neutralized, and Gaddafi's forces were halted before they could enter Benghazi. Unofficial sources suggest that there was an agreement between NATO, the United Arab Emirates, and Qatar prior to the intervention. This agreement was reportedly signed just one day before Qatar officially recognized the National Council of Transition, CNT, the opposition to Gaddafi's regime. There were various reasons behind the involvement of different parties. For example, the UAE's engagement in Libya allowed Abu Dhabi to strengthen its strategic relations with France. Some speculated that Qatar agreed to the intervention to gain exclusive access to Libyan oil reserves, which they would trade on behalf of the new Libyan government that was expected to emerge after Gaddafi's fall. However, Qatar was not the only player interested in the oil business. In April 2011, French companies also expressed their willingness to establish a presence in Libya, as revealed by emails found in the servers of Hillary Clinton, who was the US Secretary of State at the time and a vocal supporter of the uprisings. These emails suggested alleged French humanitarian flights to Libya, with executives from major French companies, such as Total and Dissent, reportedly traveling alongside them, as stated by a close advisor to Clinton in one of the emails. French intelligence agents described Sarkozy's interest in Libya as being primarily driven by the desire to secure a larger share of the country's oil production. Gaddafi's actions, including interrupting collaboration with Western oil companies, concerned major Western powers like France, the United Kingdom, and the United States. This disruption led to a 30% increase in the price of natural gas. In response, it was deemed reasonable and logical for French companies to defend their interests and benefit from the conflict in Libya, as stated by Alain Juppé, the French foreign minister at the time. Speculation about the true motivations behind the French intervention arose from a letter sent by rebel forces to Sarkozy in April 2011. The rebels offered France 35% of Libya's oil and gas reserves in exchange for French support. This offer presented an opportunity for France and other European powers to reduce their dependence on Russian gas imports. An email sent by Sidney Blumenthal, a close aide to Hillary Clinton, in April 2011, revealed that the main motivation for the French attack, endorsed by the White House, was kept hidden from other allies such as Italy or Germany. According to the report, France attacked Libya because Gaddafi intended to replace the African franc, CFA, in French African territories with a new local currency. This posed a threat to the survival of the CFA franc itself, as Gaddafi's substantial reserves of gold and silver, estimated at 143 tons, could have supported the creation of a new currency. This new currency would have provided Francophone African countries with an alternative to achieve economic independence from France. For this reason, a joint military intervention involving Qatar, France, and the British Royal Air Force conducted air bombings that struck Gaddafi's naval and air defenses, leading to the collapse of key regime strongholds like Tripoli and Sirte. Gaddafi had been hiding in these cities while being pursued by rebels. In October, Gaddafi attempted to escape through the desert, but his convoy was intercepted by military drones sent by the Obama administration. The subsequent events are well known and marked a bloody chapter in history. Gaddafi was captured by the rebels, subjected to brutal treatment including kneecapping, rape with a wooden stick, and ultimately executed with a gunshot to the head. These horrific acts were recorded on video. At that point, NATO ceased its operations and abandoned Libya to its fate. With the demise of Gaddafi, the race for control over Libyan resources had just begun. US sources emphasized the importance of preventing countries like Turkey or Italy from encroaching on the territories designated for the US, France, and Qatar. In Libya, the death of Gaddafi evoked mixed reactions. Some rejoiced, while others remained attached to the memory of the old leader. There were also those who foresaw that the future crisis would make them regret the fall of the old regime. The aftermath of Gaddafi's downfall was shaped by the historical divide between Cyrenaica and Tripolitania, leading to a de facto separation. Libya has descended into anarchy, with the rise of Islamist groups, local gangs, and the breakdown of old alliances among tribes in the southern part of the country. This power vacuum has left Libya in a state of lawlessness, where no single entity holds control and everyone pursues their own interests. Sadly, Libya's recent history has been marred by two civil wars. The first civil war came to an end with the death of Gaddafi in October 2011. However, the conflict never truly ceased, transitioning from the hopeful Arab Spring to a cold Arab winter. On one side, General Haftar and his loyal forces established themselves in Cyrenaica, specifically in Tobruk. Haftar asserted his authority, claiming that the mandate of the General National Congress had expired. He received backing and financial support from the United Arab Emirates, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, France, Syria, and Russia. On the other side, various factions aligned in Tripolitania under the Government of National Accord, GNA. Their former Prime Minister, al-Sarraj, faced accusations of terrorism from Haftar dating back to 2012. Turkey, the United States, and the European Union supported this faction. Essentially, al-Sarraj accused Haftar of attempting to reinstate a regime reminiscent of Gaddafi's. A protracted stalemate ensued as both sides vied for control over the country's main oil reserves. Peace talks began in 2012 with the aim of stabilizing Libya, but the presence of terrorist organizations like ISIS and al-Qaeda complicated the resolution of the conflict. The chaotic situation also facilitated organized crime, particularly weapon trafficking and migration flows from sub-Saharan Africa to Europe, becoming a highly lucrative business. Prior to the revolution, Libya possessed Africa's largest oil reserves, and oil revenues accounted for 96% of the country's income. However, today, oil production has drastically declined. Libya struggles to export even a quarter of its pre-war peak of 1.5 million barrels per day. The nation is now in a grave state, and one can only hope for the best for a country that holds geopolitical significance not only for North Africa, but also for Europe. In the face of these challenges, let us hope that Libya can once again embrace its old motto of freedom and unity. The stability of the nation is crucial for the region and beyond, and it is our collective wish that Libya can regain its strength and prosperity as soon as possible.